And we're live! Yay! We're live, we're live, we're live. All right, gentlemen, it's another episode of Christian Fandom Geek. And we've got a bit of Star Wars talk with the boys. We're going to talk about generational moments in Star Wars, our favorite Star Wars characters. We're going to talk about morality within the Star Wars universe as well. It's going to be a lot of fun. So let's go with Richard, because Richard, this is your first episode on Christian Fandom Geek. One of many, I hope. But you've been absolutely awesome to come on, because I know YouTube isn't really your thing. You're normally on Twitter, on X, battling away with people who don't know how to give up good arguments for anything, and you tend to be the voice of reason. So do you want to give a bit of a shout out as to what you do on Twitter, who you are, and a little bit about yourself?
Sure. As it says, my name is Richard. I am from Sweden. I'm 29 years old. I'm not 29 yet. I turned 29 in 2 months. I'm currently in college, studying to become a teacher and studying some philosophy on the side. On Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, I try to attack, not attack, but like try to deconstruct and offer counter arguments to any argument, really, if it's pro-atheism or against atheism, or pro-theism against theism, or like, it doesn't have to be philosophy or religion. It could be morality, it could be evolution, it could be politics or ideologies. Just in general, if I spot a bad argument, I want to first off rebut it, and then at the same time try to steelman it to the best of my ability, and then even like deconstruct the steelman of the argument. Like, just, I see a bad argument, okay, how can I make this as good as possible? If someone offers an argument against evolution and it's just like, monkeys still exist, why humans? Like, that kind of arguments. Why are there still monkeys if there's humans, right? That's a really bad argument. But you could steal
it's one of the really worst ones, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's probably the worst. But you could still steelman it. I don't think I could do it at the point, but you get the idea. Where I see these really bad arguments online, and I try to educate people, try to get them to think more critically and more logically and more coherently, so to say. And then on Star Wars, I just love it. Man, it's just so great. I think I have maybe 25 books from... No, there's more than 25 books in the universe, but it's old universe. It's pre-Disney canon. But it's like ranging from 4,000 years before the saga to 1,000 years, 2,000 years. It's books about the saga itself. It's books about Vader, what happens between like episode 4 and 5, stuff like that. I love Star Wars. My dad introduced me to it when I was like 6 years old, and ever since then it's been a part of me. Star Wars is really close to my heart.
Yeah, we're gonna chew the fat with Star Wars as well, and it's nice because we can talk about across the board as well. So, Rob, my good friend.
Well, I guess after all these years, I'm pretty much just like the average Joe, I guess. I'm the guy who I've spent many years working in retail and this and the other. I love my films. I love, stuff like that. It's whether it's Star Wars, other sci-fi stuff, or action. I love all sorts of stuff. So I don't know stuff to the level, maybe the same level in depth as, say, someone like Richard. I suppose I just sort of look at stuff as it is. And yeah, I'm an atheist, but I'd say I'm also a bit of a realist. I'm the sort of guy where I sort of take things as they are. Sort of someone that has to almost see something to believe it. So it means I sort of will, I like to think I'll sort of ask questions based on what I think others would think, rather than asking questions just to be awkward, I guess. But yeah, I'm just someone that, just generally enjoys films, enjoys different things. And I just like to, sometimes it's I find it interesting sometimes the differences between stances on things, such as like say like your Star Trek, your Star Wars, and like say other various like sci-fi films on how they portray different characters. Some have the whole good and evil. Some have it where it's a bit like a world of, well, like a universe of all sorts of possibilities. And yeah, I suppose I just like to judge and compare accordingly, really.
Yeah. And you are a geek. I mean, you've got your own YouTube channel. You are a bit of a gamer.
I haven't used it for a while, but yeah.
Yeah. And you do, we have spoken quite a bit about some of the ideas that come out of these big science fiction sort of films, and also science fantasies, things like that. We end up talking about it. So we've had some great conversations recently about multiverse, and they were really interesting conversations. And religion and God came into the conversation of sort of flowed from that conversation, really. And we ended up, strangely enough, going into a bit of a fine-tuning argument, just because of the fact of, which we'll go again, we can go there a bit later, but yeah, it's really interesting. So let's start off, gentlemen, talking about Star Wars. What do you like about Star Wars? What got you into Star Wars? And maybe your favorite Star Wars character. So I'll go with you, Richard, because you alluded to it about your connection with your father, and your dad introduced you to the Star Wars universe, and reading up on a lot of the extended universe books. So because I want to also capture a little bit of the golden moments, those sort of generational moments that really, as a kid, that drew you into the Star Wars universe. Because obviously there are a lot of issues with Star Wars now. But obviously when we were all young, Star Wars was quite magical, and there wasn't really those sort of issues, I'll say, identity politics coming into Star Wars, and the direction that they've gone recently under Kathleen Kennedy's sort of stewardship. That wasn't really they weren't really having those issues, especially with the original trilogy under George Lucas. You had a few issues coming in with the prequel trilogy a little bit, but what really got you there initially, Richard, and who are your favorite characters from that?
Right, as I said, it was my dad. I don't remember when, probably like 6, 7 years old. We had the old trilogy on VHS tapes.
Oh, lovely.
He put it in our VHS player on our really thick TV. That's like, you just start it and you got a static jolt from your starting the TV. It's like, ouch, my finger. And then episode 1 came out when I was, let's see here, I had to be 6 years old, 2002, I think. No, it's, I always mix them up with Lord of the Rings. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I saw the first episode when I was, or episode 1 then. I must have been 7 maybe, in my mate's room. And we watched all of it, and just got to the end between the Battle of Fates. Generator between Qui-Gon Jinn, Darth Maul, and Obi-Wan. And that moment just, God, the music, the setting, the choreography, everything just captured me. And then, spoilers, the death of Kenobi. Not Kenobi, I mean Qui-Gon Jinn, hands of Darth Maul. It's so many emotions, like the foul play from Darth Maul, the way he battered Qui-Gon's head with his hilt, and then stabbed him through the stomach. Just like this guy is vile. I hate this guy, and that just fueled everything for me. I wanted to know so much more, and I rewatched the original trilogy, and then I waited for episode 2 to come out. Watched that, and it's like, that's also really cool with Yoda and Count Dooku and that fight, so iconic. It's just, I think the pivotal moment for me was probably episode 1, Battle of Fates. That scene, that's probably the moment. If I didn't watch that movie when I was 7 years old, I probably wouldn't be as deep into Star Wars as I currently am.
Yeah, I understand that. Brilliant. Rob, give me your Star Wars, sort of a brief Star Wars highlights from the start of when you got into Star Wars and what you
Yes.
like.
So I suppose when I was young, my brother and dad, obviously being older than me, were a lot more into it than myself. And they'd be watching it all the time. My brother was always going to Empire Strikes Back. When I was young, I always loved The Return of the Jedi. I think because I was young, I just loved all the little Ewoks and all that sort of silliness. I look back now and it's like, oh God. But at the time, it's like, I suppose, this whole new world and the rest of it.
That was seen as the Ewoks was seen as quite a negative part of the Return of the Jedi. That was the one thing about that film that was criticised, was the Ewoks.
I suppose, but then you look at it and then you look back and think to yourself that when they did the prequels, it's funny because I feel like the original first 3 films were judged based on, wow, it's new, it's different, there's all these cool things, and the effects and everything like that. But when they did the prequels, it became very much a case of then people judging it on, okay, have they achieved us going from, A to B? Well, because obviously the second trilogy is B to C, you could say. Mm. So I felt like people were like sort of judging that, whilst occasionally like saying, oh, we don't like these characters like Jar Jar and stuff like that. But I felt when we got to then it's like 7, 8, and 9. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So yeah, 7, 8, 9. It's a case where I felt like it then became a situation where people were a bit like, were they keen on the continuation and then the weird twists they put on it? I felt like when you were young, it's a case of we looked at stuff differently to maybe and these days it's very much judged on, what they're doing with the characters, how the characters have come across. Whereas years ago, we were just looking at it as, wow, they're cool, the effects, the lightsabers. And it's funny how over the generations, I suppose, each set of trilogy has been judged, I suppose you could say, in a different way based on different things.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Rob. I think that's a great point, because you're absolutely right. When you're young, and I noticed this, I'm thinking of the nostalgia. Growing up as a kid in the 80s, going into the 90s, I would be with my family and we'd watch Star Wars at Christmas. And at that time, we had 4 channels then. It was, you didn't have we didn't have, the cable wasn't around then. There was no Sky TV. There was no internet then. So you had your 4 channels. We didn't even have Channel 5 then. It was just the 4 channels. And every Christmas, Star Wars would come on every Christmas. Every Christmas it would be Star Wars. And it was magical, because it was like, industrial light and magic, obviously, which is George Lucas set that up to pioneer the special effects for Star Wars. George Lucas had to pioneer special effects that hadn't been done before. He had to do new things that were absolutely groundbreaking special effects to make even something simple as making a lightsaber glow, making it look like it's glowing. It had to be, you had films that had laser blasters in before, because you had the Buck Rogers film. You had other films that had laser blasters in and things like that. Forbidden Planet had things like that as well. They had little X-ray guns. But the way that they took it to the next level, and the battle scenes and things like that, the X-wings and things like that, it just took it to another level of expansive storytelling. And we bought into it, and the music, the nostalgia, and very powerful motives, and powerful sort of the good versus evil play out in Star Wars. It was very, what they call it essentially romantic cinema. So that it's a sort of part of science fiction and science fantasy, where it's known as romantic, where it pulls on your heart and it makes you fall in love with the genre. And especially if you're young as well, you're going to be very, very impressionable to that type of cinematic storytelling. So when you're saying that, I totally get it. When I remember seeing Darth Vader probably for the first time and thinking, oh my gosh, he's intimidating. You wouldn't want to mess with him. And then when you see him killing his own people because some of his own troops are incompetent, and he's like, man, he's killing, even his own people he'll kill. It's just like, this guy's ruthless. Whoa. And I hadn't come across that before. And I think if you parallel it to now, if you do that sort of juxtaposition to how we are as adults looking at Star Wars, and you look at things like the Force Awakens, and obviously the Force Awakens, I played it quite safe, but then when you get to the Last Jedi and you bring in like, whoa, this sort of subverting expectations of Rian Johnson's storytelling and what they did to Luke Skywalker. It's like, hang on a minute. This isn't the Luke I knew from the original trilogy. This isn't like, Empire Strikes Back or Return of the Jedi Luke Skywalker. I don't recognize this Luke Skywalker at all. What is going on there? And I think that's cool. That caused a lot of the friction that we get today with the Disney version of Star Wars being very different to the George Lucas original Star Wars, even the prequels. George Lucas, we've never really come across George Lucas doing something like that, where it's like, yeah, we're going to make Luke Skywalker depowered, angry, and weird, drinking green milk on Octu. Like, with what's going on there, like, you know what I mean? So yeah,
it's very immersion breaking.
Go deeper into that, Richard. Go deeper into what you're saying now.
Right. So, as you said, the comparison between Luke in episode 6 with Luke in episode 7 and 8, we have this picture of he is a kid in those movies, not the actor, but the character. He's 19, 20 years old. He has got off Tatooine. And he doesn't give up. He's steadfast. He has his principles. He believes in the good character of everyone, including Vader, which, I mean, sure is his father, but he's fallen so deep, and yet Luke never gave up. And
That's
then
right.
you get to episode 8, and he just throws the lightsaber over his shoulder, and it seems like he's given up. Well, he has given up. He says it, like, just give up. He tells Rey to just give up. And that's just, it's immersion break. It's contrived. We're lacking so much. Like, their excuses, but it's been 50 years. Of course it's going to change. Well, yes, but there's no motivation for it. Just saying things are different. Yeah, but why are they different? But that comes way later. We need it. If we don't get it before we meet Luke, it's just gonna break the immersion completely. Sure, we get some whack explanation in the next movie as to why things happen, but it ruins that episode completely for me.
Yeah. What do you think, Rob?
I think that, to me, it's a case. I said the first 3 films, obviously, the original films, because they had a story, it worked well. And then the prequels, because they had the whole plan was just literally to set that story up. Once again, they got a plan. When they got to the new films, it's like they tried to think, how can we have nostalgia forced into this? I know we'll try and have it, so we'll try and have like a Death Star in the first one. We'll try and, we'll have it's all based around family and bloodlines again. And I just felt like it's so much a case of it's, instead of trying something new and different and trying to take it somewhere else, it's almost like they're trying to play on what worked in the past, but it just didn't work in the future. And then they tried to then keep taking stuff that extra bit forwards of Force powers and X, Y, and Z, to the point where it just sort of wrecked what had been previously set up.
Yeah, so I get that. So obviously that's a really interesting point. So you had the situation where it was still a Skywalker saga in the new trilogy, because the first film, The Force Awakens, was all about finding Luke Skywalker, but Luke Skywalker, again, they tried to subvert expectations, but in a milder way. But it was like, well, surprise, Luke's not really in the film, and he's only in the film right at the end. And the way that they built it up with Rey finding the planet, finding out to going up the steps of the temple, and then seeing a much older Luke Skywalker who is hooded and robed, almost like Gandalf the Grey type thing, like from the Lord of the Rings, hooded and robed, the beard, long hair, looks grufty. And it's like, oh, okay, this is interesting. There's some potential here, because obviously Luke's very different. So what we need to know what's happened to him. Like, so they put some mystery in there, and even the whole thing of we're not seeing until right at the end of the film. If the second film, which is obviously the Last Jedi, if that film is a great film, then what they've done in the first film is absolutely fine. You might even say it's quite a quite genius, because we didn't expect it at all. We expected the first film to be a Luke Skywalker heavy film, and it was all about him, because the whole thing was to find him. So it was all about him, but he was conspicuous by his absence. So it's like okay, this is interesting. I get where you're going with it. If he now is badass in the second film, then it's and then you do something amazing with him in the third film. Okay, it's great. But then it's like they had this confusion. So they had we want Luke, we want it to be about Luke, but then we want to also get away from the Skywalker lineage. So the second film, The Last Jedi, has a sort of view. Obviously, it's a different director. It goes from J.J. Abrams to Rian Johnson, and it's not a coherent shift at all. It seems almost like a little bit ad hoc, where both directors are going different directions, and so Rian Johnson takes it the direction of, okay, it's not about the Skywalkers so much. It's not even really about the Jedi so much. Anybody can use the Force, and the Force interacts with reality on a greater level. It's not just about the Jedi. And the Jedi are full of hubris to think the Force is really about them. It's a bigger thing in play, and the Jedi are just a small part of it. And the scene that you guys have alluded to of Luke throwing away the lightsaber, and it's like wow, that's really disrespectful. Like every Star Wars fan, I think, saw that moment of Luke at the beginning of The Last Jedi throw away the lightsaber and think of it as nothing. And we were all shocked. We were like, what's just happening? What's going on? And they knew that we were upset about that, because when you get to the third film, they juxtapose it again with Rey doing the same thing, but Force Ghost Luke catches the lightsaber and makes a speech saying, a Jedi's weapon is to be respected, or whatever he says. So they knew that the fans were shocked by Luke's sort of disrespect of the lightsaber, because we all hold the lightsaber very, very dearly. So I do get what you're saying with that, and that it has caused a lot of friction. And Richard, what do you think about the friction that's came out of the storytelling going from J.J. Abrams to Rian Johnson? And do you think the fan reaction was justified with the fans that weren't very happy with it? What do you think?
Tough question. JJ obviously had his vision of what he wanted to do with the Star Wars universe, and then Rian Johnson had a completely different vision, and they just clashed. And the way it clashed was really obvious on the screen. So it's just, as you said, there's friction between the movies, and this friction got, for lack of a better word, translated to the fans. Yeah. We noticed the friction between these two directors. Like, JJ is not a bad director.
No, it's not.
Rian Johnson is not a bad director. Knives Out, fucking excellent movies, both of them. But then they two, they needed to communicate better. They needed to be on the same page. The interview with Rian Johnson on the Last Jedi is just like the first thing he thought was, I got to get rid of Kylo Ren's helmet. I think it's silly. But that's the thing. That's what makes him interesting, because you don't know what's behind the mask. He is trying to emulate Darth Vader and be like him, but failing in this emulation. And that's what's interesting. Remove the helmet, and then you remove all the motivation from Kylo Ren, which you feel that disconnect between them, and that irritates me as a fan, because I want a holistic universe. I don't want pieces and just shattered images or visions. I mean, it's I think the annoyance is justified by the fans, because it's been 50 years of Star Wars almost, and then they two directors kind of pick it up and then just ruin it. in 5 years' time, they just ruin 50 years of Star Wars.
It's mad, that is mad.
It's annoying. It's frustrating, and I think it's justified.
Right, Rob, what do you think?
I was just thinking, I suppose, with the whole Kylo Ren and Darth Vader thing, I was just thinking, does anyone think though that he was a bit of a wimpy baddie? It's like they've tried to set him up to be a bit like Darth Vader. No, but they've tried to set him up to be a bit like Darth Vader, who's got his like dark side, but then they're trying to make him sort of come back and be good again, and this and the other. But at the same time, he never had that presence like Darth Vader did. When Darth Vader was around in the original films, you know, everyone's a bit like, oh god, you know, Darth Vader's around, it's like the big baddie and stuff like that. With Kylo Ren, it was almost like the way he came across, almost like so conflicted, emotional. It just came across almost like a bit like a kid, you could say. Sometimes, like almost very doing something, rather than someone that you really sort of, as a baddie, thought, "Oh God, this guy's a badass," or something. Do you know what I mean? Or something like that. It didn't. You know, when you look at Darth Maul and some of these other cool Sith characters, I just felt like Kylo Ren never had that same presence and sort of grit that made you think, like, "Wow, he's you were someone wouldn't want to come up against." Why is
Yeah. That's a good point. I mean, I think they went with the sort of, yes, he was emotionally unbalanced, and I think they did it. They was very deliberate with that. It was very deliberate that he was emotionally unbalanced. Even his cross-hilt lightsaber, the fact it was very messy. If you looked at the lightsaber, it looked like this. Like it was very jagged, and it just didn't look right. It's like, hang on a minute, who have you? Has someone?
Kyber crystals.
Say that, Richard. Say that again.
Unstable kyber crystals.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So like everything about him is very edgy, it's unstable, and then early in the film, you find out almost pretty much straight away that the light side of the Force is pulling at him. Again, really interesting because you don't see that with Vader. Obviously, towards the end of the Return of the Jedi, you see Luke pulling at Vader. You can tell that there's something, the way that he's talking to Luke in a calm way and calls him son. You can tell, okay, Luke, there's a connection there. There's something going on there. But with Kylo, the light side of the Force is directly pulling at him, and we didn't really see that with Vader much, apart from through Luke. We didn't see it with Darth Maul at all. So we got that sort of, okay, he's very unstable. His lightsaber is unstable with unstable kyber crystals. Is in flux. Is a character that's in flux. He's been pulled at different directions. It's the light side of the Force. It's like metaphor for God. It's like God pulling at the heart, tugging the heartstrings of a sinner. Like, come on, repent. Come on now. I want you back into the kingdom. It's that kind of thing.
So what I'd say though is, if you think of it, when in the first films, when it came to Darth Vader and Luke, you think of it, Luke was a bit like the newbie. Obviously, yes, we knew he became like this super Jedi, you could say. But at the same time, he had to sit there almost training to basically have a chance against Vader. Then if you look at then the newest trilogy, then it was very much a case of where Kylo Ren almost got beaten almost by the end of the first film by someone who's a newbie still. It just felt like, no, but it's just, if you think of it, it's just like, it just didn't come across as this big, like, mighty baddie to be thought. It's a bit like, hang on a minute, in the first film, this lady's only pretty much just learned what the Force is. It's almost nearly beaten him already. Do you see what I'm saying? It didn't have the same sort of, like the same sort of wow factor or sort of mighty villain factor. I know he might be being pulled in different directions, but considering you're still an apprentice, he was still going to these planets, as you saw in the early in the films, was the scaring people and this and the other. Things have surely, based on all of his training or whatever the situation, he should have been still a bit more mighty than he actually was as a baddie. I just felt like that. I felt like by him killing Solo as a way of trying to make him that deep, like that villain, rather than because of his actual natural, I don't know, charisma and the way he sort of did the character.
Yeah, make a defense though. I'm fine with him losing to Rey based on two factors. One, he took a crossbow bolt to the stomach from Chewbacca's bolt gun. And that, if you look earlier in the movie, that crossbow bolt sent a stormtrooper flying through the air. It hit the ground and it just exploded and sent it flying. He took that to the stomach and lived. So he's like bleeding profusely. And then on top of that, he just killed his dad, which tore him up completely. So I think that one is fine. But the problem with Kylo in the movie, like, it's not really a problem, but it's more so an observation. Vader tried to be good and failed, apart from Luke in the end. Kylo tries to be bad and fails. I think that is the mirror between them. Like, Kylo tries to be Vader, but he's failing. He wants to be like badass like Vader or like evil like Vader, but he's failing. Meanwhile, Vader, he tries to be good in episode 1, 2, and 3, but he fails. So he turns to the dark side, and then it's the opposite for Kylo, where he tries to be evil, but he fails at it. So I think that was an interesting parallel between them, and if they played into that and made that his core character, it could have been really good, but then they just threw it all away, which is really, really tragic. They had such a good character, and they just threw it away.
Yeah, I really wanted to like Kylo, and in that sense, and I think initially in The Force Awakens, when he's got his helmet on more, and you can tell he's quite violent. He's got that aggression to him. I know he whines and he's a bit of a man baby, but he has got that aggression to him. He is quite violent. You can obviously tell he's powerful as well in the Force. I thought there's a lot of potential there, and that kind of, like I say, like you alluded to, Richard, and you, Rob, as well. Some of the narrative storytelling decisions on Kylo Ren's arc, on his journey, fail when you go into the second film, when you go into The Last Jedi, and don't seem to necessarily get better in the third film, The Rise of Skywalker. I feel like by the time you get to the third film, his switch back to the light side of the Force, it's too abrupt. And Rey's decision to like almost fall in love with him and suddenly snog him and think that he's the best thing ever. So this guy that's been abusing her for 3 movies, suddenly she's in love with him. It's like, I know they were going into the enemies into lovers trope. I know they were going into that, but it felt very rushed.
But do people as well feel that if you think of it, the original films, the Force was pretty much like, they got the lightsabers, but and they could move stuff, using the Force. But apart from that, it's pretty much a bit like Captain America, where they sort of could jump higher and had different abilities and stuff like that, because of the Force. But overall, it was primarily either moving stuff with their minds or using their lightsabers primarily. Obviously, apart from the Jedi mind tricks, you could say. I felt like the original prequels pretty much stuck with that. Where there wasn't anything real big changes to the Force in that respect. But then when it got to once again the new films, it seemed to once again be a bit like, and now they can almost talk across space. They can now, in the last film, her literally be able to destroy the spaceships. It just felt like a big case of where they've almost gone from being like, people with almost like the extra abilities to almost a bit like she was almost like a god in the end. Almost the fact that she's just what I'm saying. It's just she's like she was 4. It's like she was 4 or something in the end, where she's destroying everything with lightning. It just became a bit like, okay, well, I felt like, did anyone else feel like when it came to the Force, it's like when they got to the last 3 films, they almost thought like, no, we'll make everything so much more extreme as Jedis or whatever now, as baddies, rather than Sith, rather than actually just sort of sticking to the original sort of abilities. And do you know what I mean?
Rob, you've hit Richard. I know Richard's going to come in there. I can feel the energy burst of. I can feel the energy coming from Richard. Now, Richard, it's very, only in a few moments in life can you really predict probably what someone's going to say. I think I can predict what Richard's going to say, primarily based on something Richard said earlier. Richard's read a lot of the books. And so I think Richard's going to allude to some of the things that's in the book. So I'm going to let you talk now, Richard, and see whether I'm correct or not.
spot on. Extremely spot on. Okay, I agree with Rob. We can say the power scaling, nerdy term, in the 3 episodes that we got, Force Awakens, Last Jedi, and Rise of Skywalker, the power journey, rather, that Rey goes through is unprecedented in both canon and non-canon. I can bring up like really old Sith Lords and Jedis, and she's competing with them, and they've been like training their entire lives. Like, sure, someone like Darth Malgus is stronger than her. He took a bloody mountain to the face and lived. But when you look at someone like Darth Bane, who is like the literal foundation for Palpatine and the rule of 2, she competes with his power, which is kind of insane because he was the strongest Sith of his time by far. No one can compete with him. He would probably, in a fight, in a lightsaber duel, he would demolish pretty much everyone in canon. Like Yoda would likely be the only one standing up to him. He's just too damn powerful. Palpatine wouldn't stand a chance. On Force powers alone, he could turn people to ash with his Force lightning. Several people at once, actually. And he created Sith holocrons on his own. He almost became immortal due to essence transference, an old Sith technique. And then there's Rey, who trained for one montage in the last movie, and all of a sudden, by the end of The Last Jedi, when we're on this, I can't remember the name, the red salt planet.
Scarif.
Scarif, right. They're on this planet, and they are fleeing in the backside, and she's just lifting like, I don't know how many hundreds of tons of stone with no effort. She's not even straining through. There's no sweat. There's no shaking. There's no like just a dead expression on her face. Like, this is nothing. Just throwing away like 1,000 tons of stone, and I'm just, that shatters everything. Like, she's stronger than Yoda at this point. He struggles to lift an X-wing from water, and that's like 2,000 tons maybe at most. Like no, it's not even 2,000. It's like, no, that's way too much. Like maybe 15 tons because it's like a car. It's car sized, right? Like maybe 15 tons on X-wing, and she just lifts like 1,000 tons of rocks effortlessly. Just what? Huh?
But also, what about the fact, so I was slightly steering away from just Rey here, like that scene of Leia where she gets sucked into space and then she pulls herself back in, and it's a bit like, once again, what was the need of that?
I think she should have died there.
To me, it's like, surely Jedis, when they're basically humans but with extra abilities, surely if they get sucked into space, therefore they should just be, as bad as it sounds, dead, rather than suddenly be able to then pull themselves in and then almost live for a while. And I felt like certain aspects of the Jedis became suddenly almost then there's like they were almost far from just being like humans, if you get me. Or
that's super fun scene where she was like, da, 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 da.
Yeah, and it's
Mary Poppins. I'm Mary Poppins.
Yeah, I just felt like they've just sort of almost stretched the abilities of Jedis in different situations. You even think yourself, why it's almost just made it laughable and made the whole Jedi thing almost questionable with their abilities and also those films, rather than if they'd have stuck to the original sort of abilities. Yes, if Rey been able to use lightning, but on just a couple of characters, and that's one thing, but shooting all these spaceships in the air, and it just felt like everything just went to the maximum, as if like they thought, I know, what can we do? Well, if they had that ability, we'll give Rey 100 times that ability. It just became almost like too much to me.
A lot of people said about and it goes into like Kathleen Kennedy as the president of Disney Lucasfilm. There's a lot of people saying that the Rey character is a self-insert of Kathleen Kennedy, and that's why she's overpowered, because Kathleen, through ego, is wanting to represent herself vicariously through the Rey character, and so that is the sort of motivation of that. Now, I don't know, Richard or Rob, if you think that's the case, but on Twitter and other forums, yeah, it was, people did say that, they thought that. But yeah, the overpoweredness goes into sort of like Richard was saying, there's sort of magical power systems. So sort of magical power systems, like if we talk about, say, like Lord of the Rings and Gandalf has a certain level of power, and it's like, because he's a wizard, you expect him to have more than one or two powers, but it's deliberately in Lord of the Rings, Gandalf is never really shown as overpowerful, even though actually Gandalf is very, very powerful, like really powerful. But
he's an angel.
Yeah, it's essentially an angel. But it's always played down in Lord of the Rings. It's very, very much played down in Lord of the Rings a lot, how powerful Gandalf is. And you only get glimpses of it. But the idea is that it's great, because when you do get those glimpses of how powerful Gandalf is, you're like, oh, wow, he can do some stuff. And it's really like, it kind of, it rewards you for being a Gandalf fan, those moments when he shows a glimpse of his power. And I like that. I like the kind of, okay, at the right moment, you'll get a glimpse of how powerful the person is, but we're not going to go over the top, and you'll get little glimpses here and there just to let you know how powerful. You'll get moments of it. And it's great because there's still tension. When Gandalf's fighting in battles, like at the end of The Return of the King, when he's with the armies of Gondor and Aragorn's there, and there's still tension as to like, they're outnumbered, Gandalf could still get hurt and things like that. Obviously, we had Gandalf actually in the Fellowship get killed, and obviously he gets resurrected and brought back. So we get kind of those moments and things like that where you never look at Gandalf and think, oh, he's overpowered, he's way too overpowered. Because if a character's overpowered too much, and Richard, you'll know this, it removes tension from the storyline, and you have to keep tension within the story so that we're invested in the well-being of that character, and there's genuine stakes of that character. You want them to be okay. We're invested in this character, and so actually we're a bit nervous. Like, are they going to be okay when they go into a battle scene? Like, oh, okay, I'm nervous now. You know what I mean? Because this is a tough. The antagonist is pretty tough. What's going to happen? We don't know. You want to keep that tension there.
Yeah, because we're shown that Gandalf can die. Like in his form on Middle Earth, he is mortal. That form is mortal. We know he can die. It required Iluvatar, the literal creator of Middle Earth, the god of that universe, to intervene and resurrect him. That's what it took to rescue him. But then you look at someone like Rey, there's never any tension there, because we know she's the hero. We know she can't die. Well, she literally can't die. She gets resurrected in the end by a plot contrivance that we've never seen before. It's just, it breaks tension, right? There's tension in Lord of the Rings because we know these characters can get hurt. We know they can bleed.
Yes,
100%. In Star Wars, in those 3 last episodes, we don't. Oh, in the first, I think it's fine, but in The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, that tension is gone because we just see how overpowered Rey is and how fast her power is growing compared to what we're used to.
Yes. Yeah.
So an interesting sort of different question here would be: do people feel Star Wars is too defined by having Siths and Imperials as a bit like a baddie? Sounds silly, but if you think of it, with Star Wars, you've always got in all the series and all the rest of it, you've got often the main threat is like the Imperials or the Sith or something like that. Whereas if you look at some other sci-fi films, you can always got like multiple baddies or multiple different like sort of allies and this and the other. Like say, I know it's a different extreme, but Star Trek's always been around a similar sort of time. And they've got all these different factions, like races, different, worlds, Romulans, Klingons, and Borg, and all sorts. Sometimes the big bad threats, like the Borg, you could say, and sometimes just other species that have their own disputes. But with Star Wars has always very much relied on, almost in all the series and all the rest of it, the baddie being the Imperials or the Sith. And you feel like with Star Wars, though, if you try to do a series without that they'd almost be like lost of what to do. It sounds silly, but I feel that. If you think of even like stuff like the Mandalorian, once again, the Sith or like sort of like the Imperials are still the baddies and this, that, and the other. It's very much a case. It seems that everything with Star Wars always has to involve the Imperials, even if there's no necessarily Jedi's in it.
They could easily have made a series about the Hutts being the bad guys, because the Hutts don't have. They trade with Imperials, but they like the Hutts just want their own empire. Filthy rich on Tatooine, extremely powerful drug lords and weapon traders. They could have made those the bad guys in a movie or a small series easily, because they are in non-canon, well, what used to be canon. They were huge, like enormous. And then beyond that, we could have like Dark Jedis. That could be an antagonist. If we look at again, I'm treading all ground, but the Bane series, it's a trilogy of books. There's a character, I can't remember his name, but there's a Dark Jedi. A Dark Jedi is a previous Jedi that isn't Sith, because they don't care about the organized religion of Sith. And they don't care about the organized religion of the Jedi either. They just use the dark side and the light side for their own gain. They like go around hunting trophies, collecting money, becoming filthy rich. They like would be a good in-world comparison. I don't know, Elon Musk.
Controversial right now.
I mean, that's the point. It is controversial. That's why I chose it. It's
good.
Like this guy that just, I don't want to be evil per se, but I don't want to be good either. I'm just gonna go like this path and accumulate as much wealth and power as I can, just for the sake of it. I don't have any specific goals with it. I don't want world dominance or eradicate the Sith or eradicate the Jedi. I just do it for myself. Those are Dark Jedis, and that's a really good antagonist. It's really cool to like see that kind of character, like, and follow like a Sith or a Jedi who tries to track this guy down and like confront them. That could have been cool. And yeah, as I said, the Hutts as well. Yeah, there's so much in the universe of Star Wars, and Disney was just like, nah, fam, we're gonna do the same thing again. So yeah,
it's like the Mandalorians.
I agree with you, Rob. It's just do something else, please.
Yeah, it's like the Mandalorians, as we know. The Mandalorians, they've obviously had this big issue with the Sith and all the rest of it, because he's mentioned in the Mandalorian, had this big battle with them, and that's why they don't really like Jedis and all the rest of it. It's a bit like, you could have done a series a bit more touching on the Mandalorian wars between them and the Sith, whatever. And it would have been a whole different stance of something completely different. And that would have been a cool war, wouldn't it? Really seeing like all the Mandalorians in their prime against it. And I just feel like there's lots of different things that could have been explored sometimes, but it's always very much the same sort of stories a little bit, or the same sort of baddies, or it's just always just a different leader, the Imperials causing issues, trying to do this or do that. And it's just it's just a shame sometimes. I feel like
if they went with that, Rob. If they went with the Mandalorians, like old war, like that is 5,000. No, it's 3,000 years. 3,000 years before the main storyline. When that war breaks out, it's on Mandalore Prime with Mandalore the Ultimate, and with Revan, and with not Malgus. I can't remember Revan's disciple's name, but we would get these iconic characters. We would get Revan, and we could even they could even go into Emperor Vitiate. If do you guys know who Vitiate is?
I've seen some YouTube a little bit, yeah, because I've seen some lore videos on YouTube that kind of explain it. I've not read the books, but I've watched some videos that have brushed on him. Yeah.
Yeah, so the Emperor Vitiate, he's in the Star Wars Online RPG games, or game rather, because there's only one. It's like World of Warcraft but Star Wars. And he's in a lot of books, and there's a lot of lore behind him. He's the reason all of that happens, the Mandalore Wars. It would connect back to the Sith, but they don't have to go that way. They could just end it with the end of the Mandalore Wars, and with the death of Mandalore the Ultimate. And that would have been really, really cool. Like, this this huge Mandalorian army against a huge Jedi army. It would just be cinema, right?
I'll be honest, I think that's one of my favourite Star Wars things for a while, the Mandalorian, because I feel like it's, yes, sometimes the whole Baby Yoda thing, sometimes Grogu, sometimes you think to yourself, they've maybe done a bit too much of having Grogu in there. Sometimes it's a bit maybe OTT in that respect. He's a popular character. But I feel like, the whole Mandalorians and I suppose their culture and beliefs and all the rest of it, it's a whole different area of Star Wars that makes it interesting and different rather than the same old. But it's just, as I said, normally in most of the films or series, it always still comes back to the Empire are trying to do this, or the Empire trying to be reignited, or it seems like, it's a bit like, it'd be good if otherwise they had, like I sort of say, like the Mandalorians, inside the Mandalorian, but instead of the Empire then being the baddie, there's another planet came into it where there've been it's always been a baddie of Mandalorians or something as well. It'd be good sometimes if there's a whole universe in Star Wars, but it always seems to come back to the same sort of Empire or Imperials, rather than sometimes, having all these other planets where it could be pretty much anything out there, if you get me.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I do think that's really interesting. I do. And I think if you get say it overnight, okay, somebody else comes in and they take over Disney Lucasfilm and they say, right, we're running Star Wars now, and we're going to do some proper Star Wars storytelling. We're not going to go into identity politics. We're not going to be like, oh, we only care about the image of this representing all these different groups. We just focusing on, we want diversity, but the diversity will fit within the narrative and the story will come first. So first and foremost, we're serious storytellers, and we care about the lore and canon of Star Wars. And we're going to delve into this treasure trove of a plethora of rich source material from the extended universe, and we're going to tell different types of Star Wars stories. And what Richard and Rob, you both ever talked about, is we're going to look at anti-heroes. We're going to look at different sort of villains and anti-heroes and things like that, and we're going to have a lot of fun, and it's going to be wild, and it's going to be absolutely fresh. If they did that, Star Wars would be lit again, and a lot of fans would be like, oh, thank God for that. Like, they'd be like, Star Wars is saved. You know what I mean?
Speaking of identity politics, there's actually a really, really easy way to do this. I know we're talking about the Sith, but the Sith name, I'm going to really nerd out here. The Sith name comes from the species named Sith on Korriban, their home planet. So that's where the name Sith comes from, because that's where the origin of that order started. So it's named after the species of the planet. The Sith species was actually extremely racist.
I didn't know that.
They looked down on anyone, like if you were like half Sith or half breed Sith, they were like, oh, you're worthless. If you weren't Sith at all, they was like, no, you're never going to be a Sith Lord because you're not a Sith species. So that's a really, really, like, they have it in the literal extended universe. They have this lore really racist, egomaniacal Sith species that also happen to be of the Sith Order, and they could just play that. They could make a character that tries to enter the Sith that isn't like a half breed, maybe, or not
Yeah.
a Sith at all, and then you
Yeah.
can reflect the racism there, and you can maybe look at the same time the Jedi's, who were at that point the Jedi's were pretty warmongering, really. They
Yeah.
were nothing like the Jedi we have in episode 1, 2, and 3, and they were indoctrinating children. Yeah, it's just like a lot of war between the Sith and the Jedi. I thought that could have been really interesting, and
Yeah.
a really easy segue into identity politics with racism.
Yeah, and it would be natural to the actual story and part of the story, part of the canon. That'd be amazing.
See, I think it'd be cool if they, they could have done a series, say, for instance, on the Mandalorian Wars, like I was touching earlier. They could have done like a series on, like, say, like the Wookiees. Obviously, when the Wookiees years ago, like we were all like pretty beaten. They could have done all these different stories, but I feel like, in my eyes, with Star Wars, they've created such an identity over the lightsabers, the Force, the Empire, the Rebels. That I feel like it's almost like if they then went to a planet, such as they went to Naboo, where obviously the Naboo people and the Gungans years ago, obviously they didn't really like stop sort of talking about that, you could say, of how their fallouts. I can't remember the details. It's a bit like, I feel like they then went to a planet where it wasn't involving the Force or the Empire or rebellions. I feel like then, would it though just be then a sci-fi series rather than Star Wars? And maybe that's why they're maybe more hesitant, because what they identify as Star Wars with the whole Jedi's, Force and all the rest of it, lightsabers and the rest of it, if you haven't got any of that, then basically it's just, I suppose, just any old sci-fi series, isn't it?
You can look at Andor.
But
Andor,
listen,
yeah. Go ahead.
Richard. But the thing is, Richard. Yes. Oh, we'll talk about Andor. Actually, that's really good. But let me throw this at you, Richard. What about the Clone Wars animated show? So, for example, Clone Wars. Dave Filoni did a lot of stuff with Clone Wars, and some of the episodes of Clone Wars really went deep into the mythology of Star Wars. And I know, okay, yes, an animated TV show, you got a lot more freedom with animated TV shows than you do with a movie, the Star Wars movie. But they went into the Force gods, they went into the father and the son and the daughter, and all that sort of Force mythology. And it was absolutely brilliant. It was like some of the freshest, most innovative Star Wars storytelling that we've ever seen, and it was absolutely phenomenal. And as fans, we loved it. We absolutely loved it. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think you're correct. It can still feel like Star Wars if you capture the essence and mystique of Star Wars with those episodes of the Clone Wars, when, as you said, they go into the father, the son, and the daughter, and how the Force works. And then if you go look at Rebels, we talk to, God, I don't remember his name. There's like this big elk-looking Force manifestation, which is like the between dark side and light side. There's a big moose-looking character, and that, like, it still feels Star Wars, but it has nothing to do with the Jedi or this. Well, it has to do with the Jedi or Sith, but it has nothing to do with Empire. It has nothing to do with the conventional bad guys. It's just deeper lore about the Star Wars that feels like Star Wars, but you're not reminded of the classicals. Like you're. So I think it can be done, obviously, and the same with Andor. Sure, it's the Empire, but it's not really the Empire we know. It's a completely fresh side of the Empire. There's way more personal. There's way more character development. It's. I think it was someone on Twitter that said Andor is the best Star Wars, non-Star Wars series that they made. It's Star Wars, but it's not Star Wars. So yeah, I think Rob is you're correct, Rob. They have to do more of that stuff, I think.
So okay, so the thing that we've you could say two rivals. You could say Star Trek and Star Wars over the years. Sometimes people like one, sometimes people like both, whatever. But it's a case of, but Star Trek was always very much a case of almost going to all the different worlds, almost exploring these different worlds, these different species, these different people, and all the rest of it. You know, their cultures, the aliens, and all the rest of it. Whereas Star Wars has sort of touched on different species so much, but not done that so much. Say if there was a series where they had a bit like a band of people, where it's like a bit like Mandalorians or whatever, or a bit like a Han Solo, and Chewbacca or something like that, where they're going around different places a bit, whether it's a story, whether they were mercenaries or smugglers, whatever. Would you think that would be a cool idea to still explore the Star Wars universe more by actually going to all these different places rather than just sort of seeing the same sort of species, or not? Because I suppose that's, I know, sort of more of a Star Trek thing. We think of that thing with Star Wars, where it's always been, you've seen the odd species, you've heard the odd stories about how this got wiped out, that got wiped out. But then it's a case, it's only sort of been touched on, but then you've never really sort of had as much, like, apart from like the odd series, unless where it's sort of delved into more like Tatooine or, so that. There's lots of things where I feel like they've never really delved into what else is out there in the big Star Wars universe.
There's a really easy way to do this. There's a species in the extended universe called the Yuuzhan Vong, which actually comes from a different galaxy than the one Star Wars is played out in. But they are completely immune to any and all Force abilities. If you try to force push them or force grip, force choke, mind control them, nothing happens. And all of their technology is biologically based. So like you can't use like an EMP on them to knock out their starships, because their starships are just massive biological flying organisms. So that is I think that would be a really cool, because it would break all the conventions. Like, it's a bad guy, let's just use the Force. Oh wait, these guys are immune to the Force. We can't do this. We have to think of something completely new. So yeah, Rob, you're correct. Again, there's so much to explore in the Star Wars universe, and the Yuuzhan Vong would force the writers to not rely on those conventional, the armor didn't work, let's just use the Jedi. That kind of trope. They can't do that anymore. They have to rely on strategy and armies and stuff.
Or would it be cool otherwise to do it a bit like a series, but a bit like from the Empire's point of view, where in their eyes,
okay.
From their point of view, they're trying to bring order to the universe, aren't they? In many ways, in their eyes. I know there's more to it than that, but I'm saying that therefore it's a case of, if you did it from a different perspective, where from their point of view they're going around trying to solve the issue, solve all the outlaws, and the drugs, the dodginess, and bring law to the universe and stuff like that. Then I'm saying, could it be sort of an interesting take on like a different series of factor where you sort of sat there thinking to yourself, on one hand, these are the baddies, but on the other hand, I sort of understand why they're doing what they're doing, just as like a complete different spin on things.
We get that from the Bad Batch.
Yeah.
If you've seen, there's an animated series called The Bad Batch on Disney, actually. Really good series. Yeah, it's excellent. You don't really, you do follow the Empire from the inside, from the perspective of a group of clone troopers. While the clone troopers are slowly being replaced by real people, but you follow the last few remnants of the clone troopers between episode 4 and 5, I believe, and that's really interesting because you get all of these like betrayals and politics within the Empire and stuff like that. So that has actually been done, but it's not. The majority of Star Wars fans don't know about it because it didn't get that much attention. Yeah.
The other thing I'd say as well to Rob to that as well is they did try. Well, they said they were going to try it with the Acolyte TV show, which is probably after the Last Jedi movie. The Acolyte show is probably the most controversial Star Wars sort of product that they've done under the Disney Lucas film banner under Kathleen Kennedy. It was Leslie Headland is the showrunner, and it was supposed to be a Sith orientated TV show, and it just from what was pitched and what was kind of it was supposed to be. It was supposed to go into Sith mythology and really be a proper dark side show. We never really got that. We got some villain who kind of is Sith but not Sith, very vague, very wishy-washy, and the twins and the space witches. It just got really weird, like really weird. And I wasn't. And they tried to pitch it. They weren't just saying, okay, we're looking at things from a sort of dark side point of view. Then we got the Jedi as the bad guys. It's like, no, the Jedi are not the bad guys. The Jedi are humans or other species that are, Jedi, whatever, but they're not the bad guys. And if they are the bad guys, then they're not Jedi anymore. They're something else. So it went really odd, and they just couldn't bring it home as a story. But they did try it. So the Acolyte was supposed to be it, and they just couldn't do it. It wasn't coherent. They didn't do the Jedi right. They didn't do the Sith right. It was just very, very strange with the space witches. It was pretty strange. It was just a strange one altogether, really. Yeah, that was weird on, and I think the Acolyte had potential, but they just didn't pull it off.
Yeah. Could we get into? I just want to. It's going to be weird, but I want to get into the morality of it all, because that's one.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
I have to go soon because it's 11.
Yeah, those two. we've already gone over. And by the way, this has been an absolute phenomenal episode. By the way, guys, so thank you for Richard and Rob. It's been especially like getting you guys together for the first time. It's been such a great episode, and I know that the people that are watching the episode after, maybe afterwards on the weekend or next week, whatever, are in for a treat. It's a really great episode. So thank you for you guys. A lot of fun as well talking with both of you. So let's finish off maybe five minutes or so, maybe 10 minutes at a push, the morality of Star Wars, and that will bring the episode to a close. And we might have to do a part 2 where we go even more into the morality of Star Wars, because I feel like we're kind of doing it right at the end. So we'll just touch upon it now, and then we'll get in another episode, and we'll give it some justice by giving it more time. But just a few thoughts then on the morality of Star Wars. Obviously, we've kind of spoke about it a bit with the Sith and with the Empire and those tropes that they keep doing of the sort of 1940s Germany trope that they keep recycling in Star Wars, and that seems to be their good versus evil sort of trope a lot that they go to. So we've kind of gone down that route. But Richard, what else do you think stands out for you as sort of the morality in Star Wars?
It's really interesting, and it's actually really deep. I could talk about this for hours. Obviously, obviously, the Force. George Lucas took a lot of inspiration from Buddhism, with the Force being this ever-present, almost piercing substance through all of the universe, but it's not cognizant of itself. It becomes cognizant the first when it's in sentient beings. So a lot of the morality comes from there, and then his idea on this was that the dark side and the light side are two sides of the same coin, but using the dark side, like even the minimal use of the dark side, is putting things off balance, while only using the light side is keeping things in balance. So theoretically, that is the case. But then you look at how these religions act, like the Sith religion and the Jedi religion. How do they actually conduct themselves? George Lucas said that the Jedi in episode 1, 2, and 3, they had failed. They had fallen to what's the word? Complacency, and they had misinterpreted the message of not the prophecy, but they got that right, but like they handled it poorly. They misinterpreted the message of no attachments. So that's a thing. That's a thing in Buddhism, that you shouldn't have any worldly attachments. But in the Jedi, they saw this as reject everything. Like, you can't feel love for someone because that's dangerous. You can't be married to someone because that's dangerous. You can't have kids. You can't know your family. A lot in the extended universe, some Jedi at some points, like, they were forbidden to contact their families that they were taken from as kids. But that's misinterpreted. Like, the problem isn't that you do have possessions. The problem is that you are too attached to those possessions. Like, it's fine to love someone. It's fine to be married. It's fine to have kids and a family, as long as those attachments don't influence you in a way that leads to the dark side. That's the problem. But then the Jedi were just like, well, we fail a lot of times, so the best way is to cut all of that off, prevent all attachments, prevent everything. But then you get Anakin, who grew up with his mom. He comes to the Jedi, and they try to enforce this on him to cut off everything. But he already has these attachments. He has his attachments to Tatooine and his mother. So he's unable to cut them off because he's not 2 months old. He's 12 years old. He's used to. He loves his mother. The emotions run too deep, and they just tell him to cut it off.
That's Yoda. And that's poor leadership on Yoda's part.
It is. It's horrible management of Anakin's emotions. And the Jedi were not equipped to deal with Anakin's emotions. So that's why he fell. Because Obi-Wan,
it's a reflection of Yoda.
It is. It's a reflection of their failure as the Jedi Order. They became complacent. So when we look at the morality of the universe as laid out by George Lucas, the Jedi were actually immoral in episode 1, 2, and 3. Sith more so, but that doesn't, like, just because the Sith are more immoral doesn't make the Jedi correct. They're actually also bad guys, just not as bad.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's not so much. I'd probably slightly disagree on that one. I'd probably just say that it's a reflection of humanity in a sense. And obviously I know in Star Wars, there's a plethora of Jedi who are not human, but you get what I mean. That sort of humanity across the board, even in an alien species kind of thing. I think it's that kind of, that there is no perfect. Like, I'd agree with you, Richard, in a sense that no one's perfect. I agree with that. I think the Jedi are the good. I just think they're also flawed as well, because of their humanity, because of their being people, because of them everyone has issues. Everyone's trying to work out things in life, and that's, the Jedi are not angels. They're not like Gandalf. They're not angelic. They are just humanoid, human type.
Yeah, they were accidentally bad.
Yeah, they're accidentally bad in that sense. Or I think it's just through their nature of being in this world. They are trying to make the good choices, but they get it wrong. And when they get it wrong, if enough of them get it wrong, and I think you also get some of the criticism of the Jedi Order. Apart from the Jedis themselves, the actual Order has issues, and that can be paralleled in real world religions, where again the essence of the religion is good, the founder of the religion is good, the message from the founder is good, the doctrines sometimes over time become problematic, because as you travel over time further away from the founder or the founders, you get other people carrying the baton. The message can change over time sometimes, and people get their own ideas of what that message was, and so it can end up far away from the original founders' gospel, shall we say, so to speak. And that can be a problem as well when a religion, obviously a religion starts with a person or a founder who has a revelation, or in Christianity we say Jesus is the revelation. He's God incarnate on the earth. So the founder has a revelation or is a revelation, but then the others coming along after the founder are talking about the founder's revelation. They're talking about the revelation that was given to so and so. For some of them, if they're the apostles, they have the revelation as well. For others, some other people don't quite have that revelation at all. They're just reading or interacting with other people's revelation. And I think any religion can become institutionalized in a way that down the road, or any movement, even not even just religions, can start off good or have good intentions, but down the road they can go wrong. And I think the Jedi Order just is one of those things where I think they're very noble, their intentions are good, but down the road they come away from their core beliefs in a way, and they interpret things wrong, and they by the time you get to Yoda and by the time you get to Anakin, they're far away from where they should be. And I think that's a part of it for me.
Do you think that, say, if they ever had something, because let's be honest, religions have people that have follow a bit like a generic belief, and I'm not trying to be mean to religions when I say this, and then you've got like people which follow like more like have like extremists and stuff like that sometimes. Do you feel it would have been ever cool if they had sort of a bit like, or they might have had in comics, I don't know, where they've had like either Sith or the Jedis, where they had sort of conflicts within themselves, almost a bit like a civil war, something like that, through like extremists in their own sort of camps or something like that, with different like extreme verdicts of what they should or shouldn't be doing compared to what the collective do. Do you know what I mean? Like in real life, where you might sometimes get the odd extremist groups. Have they ever, I don't know, in comics and that, ever had that with the Sith or the Jedi, where there's been like an extremist which is therefore sort of turned on their own people? I don't know.
Absolutely. Not only has it happened, it is like perpetually happening in the Star Wars universe. If we look at the Sith first, it is by their nature, as Revan explains, that they will betray themselves for higher power. He explains it as if you have a master in the Sith, and this master takes on several acolytes or disciples, their hunger for power will lead them to ally with their disciples to overthrow the master. And this will happen again and again and again and again. So the Sith are always on that extreme end of, no matter the cost, I must have more power. And it's a self-destructive behavior, which lasted for millennia until Darth Bane kind of sorted out. It was still flawed, but he kind of did the best he could with it. And then you can look at the Jedi, which to a lesser degree in episode 1, 2, and 3, they became extremists in their ways. They refused to introspect. They refused to think, oh well, we could be wrong. Yoda was a bit on that, and Qui-Gon Jinn as well. Qui-Gon Jinn was not a fan of the Jedi Council at all. He thought they became dogmatic and complacent, and Yoda said that they could have interpreted the prophecy wrong, but the majority of the Jedi were like, no, we're right. we can't be wrong. We're the Jedi. We're the good guys. So they became these fundamentalist, really extremists people. And then further back, there's been several wars where the Jedi became, well, warmongers and warlords of the universe and ruled by almost an iron fist. They deceived themselves into thinking they were the good guys, but they were killing thousands of innocent people.
Once again, that would be an interesting sort of series and historic sort of thing, because everything's always been very much black and white in the Star Wars universe in regards to Jedi good, the Sith the bad, and sometimes it's a bit like it'd be good sometimes to see that sort of thing where the Jedi haven't always been the way they come across, so they sometimes had turbulence. Because I feel like I said once again, it would then be an interesting series rather than just the normal black and white that it pretty much has always been in many ways.
And what you want to see from it is nuance. So you want to see that nuance of, it's not saying that the Jedi are totally bad now. We're not saying that all authority is bad. We're not saying that any kind of priestly authority is bad, and not even all dogma is bad. It's just that there's issues within it, and there's issues because it's just the way life is, and like it will have conflicts, and you will see like those situations play out, and you do see issues if there's too much. If things are too dogmatic, it becomes a problem. If things are too rigid from a religious point of view, it's a problem. If you go too far away from the good principles of that order, it's a problem. If people become too power hungry in that order, it becomes a problem. And you can explore all those issues in a really interesting way, and it can be nuanced as well.
A clear example of this is Extended Universe, Battle of Ruusan. As a planet where there's the last fight between the old Sith called the Dark Brotherhood and the Army of Light, I believe, was the Jedi army. They literally call themselves the Army of Light, which is ironic. And they pretty much destroyed the entire planet. It was still there, but they ruined it utterly due to force using, using the force. You could almost see, look at the use of the force on that planet, like nuclear bombs, which completely altered the climate of the planet. There were storms, droughts, snowstorms, and everything. Civilians couldn't live there anymore. Everyone left except one guy for some reason.
That guy.
He decided to stay. It was really funny. One guy decided to stay behind, which actually became a pivotal plot point in the next book. This one guy did a lot of things. This one guy who stayed behind. But all the civilians were fucked because of the conflict between the Sith and the Jedi. Terrible. They were not the angels they portray themselves to be.
No, I totally get that. Okay, I'm guessing we need to do a part 2, and it needs to be very Sith orientated. So we will get Richard and Rob back on. Rob, I know how Rob thinks. He's gonna come up with about 10 billion questions now, and he's gonna write notes.
I was also going to be it's interesting to talk about with Star as well as how people's opinions of it have changed over the years, from not just judging it on the films originally and when you liked it as kids with the action or rest of it, but these days how the films are judged on, are there enough black actors in it? Should there have been a black Jedi? And I feel like these days, that when the latest films came out, they were judged very differently of what characters they'd chosen, what skin colors, what this, what that, and the other, rather than when years ago when the films had come out and people just sort of take them for what they are and enjoyed. The sort of, so I feel that's an interesting one as well to talk about.
Okay, don't go there. Don't go there.
Right, I'm just saying to talk next time.
we'll go into social consciousness a little bit more as well. We can go on that as well. Because that's obviously it's a reflection of the times that we're in from a social consciousness point of view. But we will talk more because that's a whole thing in its own right as well. So okay, Richard, are you happy to come back on with Rob again, and we'll do this again sometime very soon?
Sure.
When you put some time.
So yes, I will be able to in like a week and a half because I have an exam.
That's not far away. That's not far away. That's fine.
No, I have an exam next Friday, which I have to study for. But,
yeah, so we could do it in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, of course.
Oh, lovely. So in a couple of weeks, guys at home watching this, guys and girls at home, there will be a part 2 to this, and we will go more into the lore of the Sith. I'm going to brush up on my Sith knowledge over the next 2 weeks. Watching plenty of YouTubers out there that talk about this. There's a guy called Star Wars Infinite, actually. He's a really good guy. I talked to him on X.
Yeah.
And he has a lot of lore videos, and he's a nice guy as well.
Stupendous Wave as well. Really good.
Oh, Stupendous Wave. I used to watch Stupendous Wave a lot I used to watch a lot of Star Wars Theory and Stupendous Wave a lot. Yeah. Back in the day, so I'm going to be brushed up on my lore knowledge. Rob will be doing the same, and we'll come back for a part 2, and we will talk a lot about the lore of the Sith and the Jedi. Yeah, and then we will brush on the identity politics and the current sort of how the social consciousness aspect of how we view cinema, especially Star Wars, in the contemporary times. We'll talk about that as well. So, gentlemen, thank you for this evening. We've gone over because I thought originally we'll do it for about an hour, and we've gone nearly to an hour and a half. So we've really gone there. So fabulous episode. And again, guys, it's been an absolute treat having these two gentlemen on together. Brilliant episode, a lot of fun. Thank you, Richard, for your time. Thank you, Rob, for your time. And we'll get together again very, very soon on more episodes on Christian Fandom Geek, and we will go deeper into the Star Wars mythos of the Sith and the Jedi. God bless you. Be kind and try and make the world a better place.
See ya.
Goodbye.
See ya.